Howdy Year 9 students, and welcome to our unit on World War One. And this first lesson is going to be on how do we know about World War One? So what sources have we got? Now, when it comes to historical sources, we have way more sources about stuff that's happened recently than stuff that's happened thousands of years ago. So when you were studying Year 7 history and you looked at ancient history, we had, a bone fragment here, dead body, a cave with a marking on it, whatever. Yeah. By the time we get into more recent times, we've got heaps more evidence. So if you look at when anyone ever does the history of right now, they're going to have heaps of stuff because there's like a million gig of YouTube videos being uploaded every second. Anyway, so we've got lots of information, as you'll find out. Now, what I want you to do is every day I want you to copy down the title of the lesson and the date, the learning goals, which will be in yellow, and copy down all the notes in white. I want you to do all the activities in your exercise book, not on a device. Let's begin. Right, our learning goals today. You're going to know what written and visual sources there are for World War One, and you're going to be able to analyze a source. And hopefully you're going to improve your creative thinking. I've got a little activity for that. Right, what evidence is there of World War One? 9 million soldiers died. That's some evidence right there. There were 18 million people wounded in total, and 60,000 Australians died out of a population of about 5 million. Now, these numbers are all approximate, which always freaks me out. How can they say, often you'll hear, oh yeah, 9.5 million soldiers. I always find that quite strange that they couldn't tell where the other 500,000 soldiers went. Anyway, there's huge amounts of sources of information about World War One. Now, just make sure that you're pausing this video as you go along so you can copy down what's being written. Okay, there's been thousands of books written about World War One. World War One is like a really popular topic to write books about because heaps of people are still interested in it, and so people want to buy books about it. Yeah, there's just as many books being written about it now as there was 50 years ago, and there's probably more. World wars or wars are really interesting in history because it feels like it's easy to teach them because you've got a start, a middle, and an end, and then later on you can talk about their causes. Yeah, whereas a lot of other historical events or developments like increase in trade, where did the increase in trade start? Where did it stop? What were the key developments within it? It's a lot vaguer. With World War One and World War Two, we feel like it's a bit more concrete. It's a bit like a book between 1914 and 1918. Boom, that stuff happened. That very bad stuff. Okay, there's heaps of primary sources. So there's maps, battlefield maps, there's military records, and I'm going to show you how you can view them online. Heaps of soldiers wrote letters back to their family. Hope you can hear those lovely birds in the background. Soldiers wrote diaries to themselves, which is a really good first person. What better way to know about what the conditions of war were like than to read about the soldiers' experiences as it happened. There's propaganda. So propaganda is information given to you usually by your government, which might be biased in one way or another. So the typical example in Australia was that there was quite a lot of propaganda posters trying to convince soldiers to join the war effort. Australia, I think, was either the only or one of the few countries that didn't force soldiers to fight in World War One. So they tried to convince them to join the war voluntarily. So this is the Australian War Memorial website. As I was saying, it's got heaps of information. So if you just go onto this website, awm.gov.au, if you have a look here, you scroll down, you can read about the official histories. You can check out, they've even scanned and uploaded actual soldiers' war diaries. So we're going to have a look at one from the First World War here. Clickety click click click. Scrolling down. This is all in the public domain. So yep, they wrote diaries that were then made public. What are we going to pick? An artillery person. So this is someone who would fire artillery shells from like land-based cannons. Here we go. General officer, commanding role, artillery. Let's have a look at his diary from April 1916, during the middle of the war. So he's a General Officer Commanding of the Royal Artillery, the 2nd Corps. Just clicking around mindlessly here. Here we go. Right. So that might be a bit hard to see, but they are his actual diaries. Madness. So that's first-hand accounts from one of the artillery commanders. There you go. We've also got heaps of visual sources about World War One. So there are lots of museums dedicated to World War One. There's quite a few in Europe, but there's quite a few in Australia as well. Australia is huge on celebrating World War One, and we'll get into a discussion about that a little bit later on. But there's this thing called the Anzac myth, which is the idea that Australia was forged as a nation in the fires of World War One and in Gallipoli, and so politicians love to celebrate World War One because it supposedly gives us this sense of national unity. So what kind of visual sources do we see for World War One? We see primary sources like photos, art, weapons. So yes, even an old gun from World War One is a primary source. Other kinds of equipment they got, like their funky hats and stuff. Secondary sources we might see documentaries. There are endless documentaries about World War One. Dioramas, so they're those cool little models that you might see in museums. Films, lots of films about World War One. And websites, again, there's heaps of websites about it. So that Australian War Memorial is a secondary source, but it contains heaps of primary sources in it. Righty-ho, people, it's activity time. Gonna try and help you develop your creative thinking on this one. So, imagine you'd been in World War One. You just come back from the war. You've been fighting. It was hell, but you're back. Your mother wants you to put 10 objects in a chest that your grandchildren will be able to open in 50 years' time to learn about the war. My question to you, and I want you to write this down, what are the 10 objects that you had that you want to put in that chest so that your grandchildren in 50 years will be able to learn about the war? Write that down now. Cool, it's time for a video. There's an amazing war memorial in Canberra, and this is a fly-through of it, so check this coolness out. Wasn't that an awesome video? Here's another video about some primary and secondary sources of World War One. Take it away. And now it's time for our reflection activity. We do that at the end of each lesson to kind of try to solidify what we've talked about. So, complete this 5 senses task. When you think about sources of information for World War One, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? Like touching, feeling, not your emotions, as in like with your fingers. And what do you taste? So complete those 5 things. I see, I hear, I smell, I feel, and I taste. It's everybody's favourite time of the lesson, homework time. So check out this picture, this statue. This is a secondary source made after World War One. Look at this statue. It's from the Australian War Memorial. What kind of source is it? I think I just gave you a big hint there, so that should be easy. What do you think's happening in it? What emotions are the characters in that statue showing? Great questions. Write all that down in your exercise book. And one last question. What can we learn about Australians in World War One from that? I ask you. Bonus homework. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but if you want to be a legend, you probably should. Read chapter 8.2 from the Jacaranda History Alive 9 textbook. Check this video out. There's a little simplified URL for you. And that, my friends, is it. Keep it real. Till next time.